What is up, hockey fans? Welcome to the Wraparound, brought to you by the Hockey News and presented by Sticks.com. I am your host, Emma Lingan. I am joined this week by Michael Augello and Willie Ramirez, and we are coming at you to talk about all of the latest bite-sized storylines from around the NHL. Starting to get into a little bit of the dog days of the offseason here, but still plenty to talk about. Before we do, though, do want to remind you that we are brought to you by our friends at Sticks.com. Why break the bank on sticks when you can get pro-level composite sticks without the pro price tag at Sticks.com? That's Stix.com. Head over there now and gear up. All right. Like I said, starting to enter into the more quiet part of the off season, but it hasn't been completely silent. I understand. I want to start here today with Willie. I heard that you had a one-on-one interview with Jack Eichel this week while he was driving through Vermont, I believe. So just wanted to check in with you about that and see if he had any interesting nuggets to tell you.
Yeah, well, he likes to go home, to Massachusetts during the off season. So he's been back there and just been relaxing a lot. He said that, taking time away to sort of mentally reset, especially after a season like last year. You come off of a Stanley Cup win and then go through the season that they went through. It's, the last couple of years with an early exit and a disappointing exit, it's it can weigh on them when there's a lot of expectations. You're brought in to do something, and they accomplish it in your first year with the team. Second year, but he went through the surgery and finished up one campaign. And Michael, obviously, you're familiar with Jack, right? Covered him in Buffalo. He goes home to Massachusetts and he sort of resets, sees some family, sees some friends, sort of gets away from it all, stays active, he said, in the gym and doing certain things to keep his conditioning up, keep his physical strength up. He was doing some charity work, went to Bruce Cassidy's golf tournament. He does something for a memorial tournament for a young lady who is friends with his daughter. So they started something with his foundation. Jack came in and was one of the golfers, and then he did a hockey camp up in Vermont. So he was driving back. We just got to chatting about different things. We talked obviously about the Mitch Marner trade. He said he's excited to work with him and learn from him. One of the things that Bruce Cassidy said on a podcast this week, a Toronto Leafs podcast, was that what he's hoping for, not just on the ice, but off the ice, this is a team, as y'all know, that the Vegas Golden Knights, that brings players in that have spent a lot of time in their initial cities. Mark Stone with Ottawa, Jack Eichel, Buffalo. Right now, Mitch Marner spends the first part of his career in Toronto, where he grew up, and now he comes here. So the readjustment in starting over when you are an elite player, it can play sort of mind games in how to adjust and sort of, hey, not everybody can anticipate a positive locker room, but the Golden Knights have always sort of stressed having that chemistry. So that was one aspect that Bruce was hoping that Jack could sort of take Mitch under his wing and welcome him in, and if he had questions and how to do that. Of course, Mitch has a strong foundation with his family, starting a brand new family with a little baby and his parents being supportive. But I think that this is going to be a relationship that we're going to see start off the ice, and will make Marner's welcome a little bit stronger.
Well, that's good. I think that's great to hear. Like you mentioned, I think, Mike, obviously you've covered Eichel in Buffalo before. How do you think about, or what do you think about the fit for him in Vegas and how obviously things seem to be going pretty well for him?
Well, he had a career year last year. He's an excellent player. And I think that the situation is with him going into this final year of his contract, I'm a little surprised that he didn't sign the extension right away, because he was eligible to sign an extension on July 1. That may get done before the beginning of the season. But the longer it doesn't happen, then the speculation of, well, is he going to go back home to sign with the Boston Bruins? I mean, that's out there. I don't know how realistic it is, but that's out there. And I mean, Vegas has been a welcoming team for players, as Willie said, like Stone and Marner, who have played a long time in their organizations. They also have a reputation of sending those players out if they don't work in Vegas. So, certain situations have no move clauses, and I'm not saying they're going to move Mitch Marner out in 2 years if they don't do well in the playoffs, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. That's what makes Vegas a very interesting franchise to watch.
Very much so, yes. Will be interesting to keep track of not only how Marner does in his first season, if he can exercise those playoff demons, but also to see what happens with Eichel's contract situation there as well. Thanks for that insight, Willie. Do want to move on to Toronto, though. They did strike a trade this week with the San Jose Sharks. So Ryan Reaves, no longer a Toronto Maple Leaf. He has been traded to the Sharks for Henry Thrun. So Reaves, 38 years old. He played just 35 games, regular season games this past season for the Leafs. He had 2 assists in that time. This kind of seemed like a bit of dead weight, maybe would be the nice way to say it, on the Leafs roster. Mike, what do you think of this trade?
The theme song of this trade is the Foo Fighters' Something for Nothing, because Ryan Reaves, well, he was demoted to the Toronto Marlies at the trade deadline to clear cap space. He was supposed to be 2 years ago when he was signed, brought in to be the sheriff, to be the enforcer. Instead, last year, he fought once. He was not a deterrent anymore because other teams essentially just ignored him on the ice. They actually wanted him on the ice because he was such a liability out there. He's a good teammate, no doubt. He's been a long-time NHLer. I think what San Jose was thinking here is, we're not going to make the playoffs. We have a lot of young players like Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith. We want somebody who will police on the ice, who will, be able to offer some deterrence if somebody takes a cheap shot. He's a good guy in the locker room, no doubt. Toronto, he had outlived his usefulness in Toronto. And in Thrun, a 24-year-old who is a decent puck mover, is a big body at 6 feet, 210 pounds. He's only 24 years old, played 3 years at Harvard, and he forced his way out of Anaheim because Anaheim has that backlog of defensemen that they have, and he basically saw that he wasn't going to get any playing time with the Ducks. And then San Jose goes out and brings in 3 veterans in the offseason. It was that situation there. So he's going to get a fresh start in Toronto. And I think, again, they got something for a player who was not going to be a factor with them next season.
Yeah, definitely not expected to be a factor if he had stayed with the Leafs. Willie, do you see Ryan Reaves being any sort of a factor with San Jose, or was this more of just a salary dump for Toronto?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, knowing Ryan personally, I'll see him this weekend at the charity softball game that they do every single year. He still comes back and represents the Golden Knights. I texted with him a couple of weeks ago when the Marner trade went down. I think it's a little bit of both. Obviously, Toronto wanted to get rid of that dead weight. I don't know how much Ryan Reaves has left in the tank, but he is a physical body on the ice. He can be there for a young team that's trying to rebuild, trying to get back. I found it ironic when the news came across. We're sitting there at the NBA Summer League and sitting there with the number 1 draft pick, waiting for Cooper Flagg to come out. And one of the beat writers for the Golden Knights, who was obviously off, right? And he shows me the flash on his phone, the flash news that Ryan Reaves to the Sharks, and we both started laughing. We said, "Who'd have thunk it?" That years later, he somewhat is the replaces Evander Kane, if you will, however you want to look at that, and how many times those two tussled and the rivalry between them two. Now Ryan Reaves is a San Jose Shark after what he did with Vegas. So it's just kind of ironic, but I agree with Michael that I think he comes in and just, I don't want to use the word mentor, but sort of that policing leadership role as a senior guy who can still throw blows if he has to. And, and I think the writing's on the wall too at this point, right? When you go to that organization, just because sort of where is San Jose? Is it sort of in purgatory? Has it rebuilt? Is it still rebuilding? I think that they got to build around, last year's, one of last year's top rookies. So combination of both. And I think the writing's on the wall for Revo. And I think he's fine with that. He knows he's nearing the end of his career.
All right. Well, we got another trade that happened earlier this week. I think maybe a day earlier, or not even a full day earlier. The Dallas Stars were able to offload Matt Dumba and a second-round pick to sweeten the pot to the Pittsburgh Penguins for Vladislav Kolyachonok, a defenseman. So Dumba he's entering the final year of his 2-year deal, which was worth $7.5 million that he signed with Dallas before last season. Talking about guys who probably weren't going to factor on a team's roster next season, I think Dumba was definitely that for Dallas, obviously. And then you've got Pittsburgh, who is entering full rebuild mode here. They have the space to be able to take on a veteran guy like Dumba, who's maybe he's not going to be blocking anybody, I don't think, from any playing time in Pittsburgh. But Mike, how much do you think this trade, not so much for Dumba, but the second-round pick that Pittsburgh got in return, this seems like a pretty good piece of work by Kyle Dubas here?
Yeah, the Pittsburgh Penguins have become the halfway house of the NHL in terms of they're going to bring in players that have salary, hope that they can reclimate them, like Anthony Mantha coming off an injury, now Matt Dumba. I mean, Matt Dumba hasn't had a good season in 3 years, but he's right-handed and he's only 30 years old. So if he can turn things around, I'm sure Kyle Dubas thinks, I got a second-round pick coming in. I might get a second-round pick going out. So it makes sense for Pittsburgh. The only thing from Jim Nill is I'm surprised he couldn't pull this one off before Mikael Granlund signed with Anaheim. The $3.75 million may have been the difference between getting him signed and not getting him signed.
Well, I also think, and we had talked about this before, that maybe Granlund's deal in Anaheim was as hefty as it was because Anaheim had to hit the cap floor. You had to get there somehow. So I don't know if Granlund was ever going to get that much in Dallas. But Willie, what do you think of this move? Like Mike mentioned, Dumba hasn't really been a super effective defenseman for several years now. Do you think Pittsburgh is where he turns it around, or is it more about just kind of offloading that salary in Dallas?
It's hard to say because of his age, right? He's at an age where you see players either sort of revive their career or they turn out to be a delayed bust. I don't want to call him that. I mean, he healthy scratched for all 18 playoff games. The Stars lose in the Western Conference Final for the third straight year. 1 goal, 9 assists in 63 games in the regular season. His lowest output offensively since his rookie campaign. And now Pittsburgh's his 4th team in 3 seasons. Is it fair to call him a journeyman already? So I think that I love the way that Michael put it in terms of Pittsburgh sort of being that stopping ground. I mean, we saw Riley Smith stop over there to get to the Rangers, to get back to the Golden Knights. I mean, are you bringing players in that you think have a little bit left to sort of help Sid find a way to have one shining moment? I don't know what that stop is, but for Dumba, I think for him, it's a place where he's going to have to, have a breakout and prove that he's still got something left in the tank. If that's the place to do it, it sure is a tough division to do so, and a tough spot with the tough hockey crowd. Being a hockey city, probably one of the toughest in the United States as far as the United States contingent of hockey teams. So it remains to be seen. I just wonder if it's time to put journeyman on that tag on him and see if he can revive his career there.
Well, we talked about the importance for Dallas, who is getting pretty cap-strapped, important for them to offload that $3.75 million that they were owing to Dumba for this coming season. So they have now successfully done that. And interestingly enough, I think maybe not entirely unrelated to that, things have quieted quite a bit around Jason Robertson. So he obviously coming off a career year with Dallas, he was rumored as a potential trade piece, as he enters the final year of his current contract. He's 25 years old, making $7.75 million annually, and he'll be an RFA at the end of this coming season. So now, obviously, the Stars, they don't need to trade him. They're not in any hurry to do so. But, looking at obviously how much we were hearing about, Jason Robertson, he might be their most valuable trade chip here. And now we're just not really hearing as much. Mike, do you think the Stars ride the season out, the full season with Robertson? Or do you think that they're still going to be trying to maybe look to shop him throughout the summer?
I think they would prefer to get him signed on a long-term deal, but it's obviously the amount, the AAV will be the big thing here. I mean, Dallas has an advantage because they're a no-tax state. They're in a no-tax state in Texas, so they expect their players to take a little less. Like Mikko Rantanen, probably on the open market, would have probably had $13.5 million, but he takes 12 in Dallas because you get more of that. Here, he's making 7.75, and apparently the negotiations on the last deal were extremely difficult, and it took a long time to get that deal knocked out. If they can't get a deal consummated before the deadline, they're probably not going to trade him in year next year because they're going to be a contender for the Stanley Cup like they always are. But next summer, with the prospect of salary arbitration and 1 year out from UFA, I don't know if he finishes out the contract. He either signs now when he's eligible, or I think eventually he gets moved, and it will be next summer.
Talking about the AAV and what that might look like, Willie, care to venture a guess as to what kind of money you think Jason Robertson might be able to earn, whether it's staying with Dallas or if he does maybe a trade and sign with another team?
Well, that's the big question, is whether his agent goes to nil and says what, and maybe is the benchmark, considering with the season that Robertson had, is the benchmark Mikko Rantanen's 12 million AAV, right? He signs with the Stars when he was traded. So is that the benchmark that you put it at, considering the season that Robertson had? You know what I find funny, and I'm not slamming this notion, because we all do it, right, when we're covering our beats, but we say that talks have quieted down. We talked about Eichel earlier, the contract extension. Why didn't he do it July 1st? It's only July 11th. And because so many things happened those first few days, right? The excitement, the signing, the agent, the Mitch Marner got done just before it. Then it dies down the second week. It doesn't mean that talks have gone away. It just means so many things happen. So many teams want to get things done. I don't think that talks have quieted. Like, to go back to the Eichel contract, I don't think that's a done deal. There's just other things in the works before they accumulate and figure out what they're going to do. There's no way they're letting Eichel walk. Same thing here. I don't know if they're going to let Robertson go, but the question is, what's he worth? What are they willing to pay, and when are they willing to get it done? I agree with Michael in that, I don't think you want to let him walk, and I don't think you want to push to trade him. It's a catch-22 with this guy, right? Because do we sign him at the right price, or if they come in too high, we're also in an advantageous situation that he's coming off of a big year where we can get the most value from him in a trade. So I think the team might be in an advantageous situation in that, hey, you come in too high, we also can get a lot for you right now. But we're still early, fresh off the July 1st date, right? That I don't think that things have quieted, as we all like to put it when we're writing our stories, that all of a sudden those talks have gone away. It's just that there was so much that first week off when July 1st hit that now when it's kind of died down, we're thinking, okay, what's going on? Nobody's in panic mode. I think, so I think we'll see some things here in the second half of the month. It's just a matter of what the agent comes in and demands. And I think they're going to use Mikko Rantanen's AAV as a benchmark.
Well, if it's Rantanen, then he's probably getting traded, because I would say probably $10 million. The risk here for Dallas is if he puts up another 40 goal a year, as he has in the past, then he's going to ask for a lot more next summer. So, and the reality here is, Willie is right. There is no rush, but from the middle of July to the beginning of September, a lot of these general managers, a lot of these players, they go on vacation. They don't come back until after Labor Day, and then they go to their individual cities and they practice and they do whatever and they get ready for the season. And there's that lull in between. And usually, if a deal gets signed, it gets signed just before or at the beginning of training camp. So if it doesn't get signed, I'd say in the next couple of days, then it's probably going to be in September. And if it's not September, it's probably going to be next summer.
All right. Well, like we said, talks may or may not have quieted down around some of the pending free agents and trades here. But one piece of news that we do have from this past week, new CBA ratified officially starting in 2026-27. So has a lot of different elements to it, such as the shortened preseason, longer season by 2 games, the absence of dress codes, all kinds of fun new elements here. But one of the things that I found especially interesting about this new CBA agreement is that there's a provision that will allow each NHL team to place one 19-year-old CHL player on their AHL roster each season. So first of all, interesting that it's limited to one. I don't know if that's kind of maybe a meet in the middle compromise situation here, but that's something that I know, Mike, you and I have talked about before, as for so many players who get caught in the middle here just because of where their birthday is, who maybe they've outgrown the CHL, but they're maybe not quite ready for the NHL, but they can't be on the AHL roster because they're not old enough. So now that this new provision is going to go into place starting in 2026, Mike, how impactful do you think this is going to be for player development?
Well, I'll give you 2 examples for the 2 teams that I have covered. Easton Cowan won a Memorial Cup this year with the London Knights. Had this provision been in place, he would have been on the Toronto Marlies, and London probably doesn't win a Memorial Cup. But in terms of the development of him as a future NHLer, does he develop better in the American Hockey League? In the CHL with London, he only had 69 points. He did not have as good a year, probably because it wasn't a challenge for him. He won every award the previous year, so the OHL wasn't a challenge for him. Matthew Savoy with the Sabres, he was a January 1st birthday, and he could not go down to the Rochester Americans. So they held on him for a little while when he was injured. He went back to, I think it was Winnipeg, got traded, and then got traded from the Sabres because it set him back. It really did. I think if he plays in Rochester, he probably stays in the organization and gets a chance to win a job. Instead, who knows what's going to happen with him in Edmonton. All I'm saying is this is a provision that I've been advocating for years, and thankfully the NHL and the CHL agreed on this.
Yeah, Willie, what do you think? I mean, this has been something that's definitely been a contentious topic for several years now with these players who are kind of in that middle ground. So how do you think this is going to impact player development in the NHL going forward?
Yeah, I don't have as much experience as Michael in terms of covering, the Golden Knights going into their 9th season. They just moved recently in the last few years their AHL team to Henderson. So the Silver Knights have been here. So I don't get a lot of coverage on my end. But what I can tell you is what they've always been very, very strong on is their player development with the younger guys, especially with Kelly's experience with his junior teams. So I think it benefits from my point of view with the Golden Knights is it can help. What I find interesting with the Golden Knights, though, is their draft picks, as we all have seen, they don't hang on to them that long. They've used them as trading and bargaining chips. So I think that what this could do, even if it's just one, is they get a chance to see them at a higher level sooner than later, and maybe not let go of a guy like one Nick Suzuki, which as it turned out with what they used him for, they don't even have the guy that they got rid of. They got rid of Suzuki to bring in Pacioretty. Pacioretty's not even here, right? So I think it gives them a chance to see maybe a top prospect sooner than later at a higher level. But I think it could help. I don't think it can hurt in terms of seeing somebody at a lot sooner than that they would previously.
All right. Well, one other team in the West that I want to talk about, because they've actually had a little bit of a quieter offseason, is the Colorado Avalanche. So they did just sign Josh Manson to a 2-year extension, so just under $4 million a year. He's 33 years old. Of course, came over from Anaheim in 2022, which was the year that Colorado won the Cup. And he was previously making $4.5 million, so he's actually taken a pay cut for these next couple of seasons. But like I said, otherwise relatively quiet off season for the Avs. They did let Drouin and Lindgren walk in free agency, but they signed Brent Burns for 1 year. Mike, do you think that they're still a top contender in the West? I mean, this looked like a team that maybe didn't have to do a ton this offseason, but looking at, the maybe sort of the depth pieces that have moved around in Colorado, does that change your opinion on them as Cup contenders in the West?
I think right now they fall a little short of Cup contender based on, Edmonton, Vegas, Dallas. They spent most of their time retaining as many of the players that they traded for at the deadline, like Brock Nelson. They re-signed him on a contract, and you have to factor in they got Gabriel Landeskog back. So that that's a player that they didn't know that they ever were going to get back, and he played wonderfully in the playoffs. I think what they're doing here is because they have a little over $4 million in cap space, they're going to make the playoffs, no doubt. I think they're going to wait till the deadline, keep that cap space open, and say, okay, now we can fit somebody in then. And they have a situation with Natchez where he's a UFA after next season. They're probably going to try to get him extended, and if they can't, he might be moved like he was moved from Carolina. So I think a lot of things are in flux for them, and that's what I think they're going to do.
Yeah, I think it's funny to see now, of course, Colorado, one of the most aggressive teams in trading this past season, and now we're seeing them be one of the quieter teams in the offseason. Willie, what do you make of this? Do you think it's maybe sort of the calm before the next storm, or are they content with where their roster is right now?
I kind of compare them to the St. Louis Cardinals in baseball, right? You kind of they get in the back of your head, and then all of a sudden they show up and they're contending, and they're there. They're just they don't go away. They're pesky, and I think as long as you got Landeskog, Makar, and McKinnon, you always have to be wary of them. Are they a Western Conference powerhouse? Probably not, because of what they've done or haven't done. But the question for me is, can goaltending hold up? Mackenzie Blackwood, Scott Wedgwood, they're capable, but can they withstand those late season, postseason runs when you're facing the Edmontons and the Vegases and the Dallases and whoever may be? But they're still a pesky team, and they're still going to be a threat. They're not going away when you have that big three of Landeskog, Makar, and McKinnon playing for you.
Yeah, that's for sure. Talking about those powerhouses in the West, Edmonton being one of them, did get some news this week. Zach Hyman said in an interview that he doesn't know if he's going to be able to play by opening night of the 2025-26 season. Of course, we now know he fractured his wrist during the playoffs, missed the end of the Oilers playoff run this past season. So again, may or may not be ready by opening night. Unlikely that he's going to miss a ton of time, even if he is ready for opening night. But Mike, do you think the Oilers need to focus on upgrading their top six even more this summer? I mean, now, of course, they've done that presumably with the trade for Isaac Howard earlier this week. But if Hyman is not ready to go by opening night, how much do you think this impacts Edmonton's offseason plans?
You've got McDavid and Draisaitl, so I think they can float for a month without Zach Hyman, as much as Zach Hyman is an excellent player. But if they were of the mindset of going after a top six forward, with what? They just traded one of their last first-round pick that they had in the organization in Sam O'Reilly for Isaac Howard. I think it's unfair to plug Isaac Howard into the top six. Other than that, they could trade Matthew Savoy. They don't have enough cap space. And really, if you look at the free agent pool, one of the guys who was a potential top six guy, they didn't sign, which was Jeff Skinner. And I don't think he's a top six guy anymore. All the guys who were top six players are signed already. So I think they're stuck with what they have.
Yeah, Willie, what do you think about this? I think Edmonton, again, they're like Mike said, you got McDavid and Draisaitl, you're doing okay. So do you think that Hyman potentially missing the first part of the season is going to be that impactful for them?
I don't know. I mean, I saw this on the rundown, and my first thought was Shea Theodore. He breaks his wrist in the Four Nations, and he makes it back in time to play for the Golden Knights. So I think that he'll be back. It's I don't know if it's comparable, the severity, but it doesn't sound, if they're saying the start of the season, what they're letting you know is that he's going to be in rehab process by then. Figure, takes the summer off, rehab process. If he's back by October, I think this team is fine. When you consider this roster and the forward depth with Draisaitl, with Janmark, with Kapanen, and of course McDavid, it goes without saying, Nugent Hopkins. This team is deep as it is, and I think that they'll be fine. Do they need to go restructure and trade? And that's to me, the question posed makes it sound like they should be in panic mode because of this, and I don't think that they need to be. With as long as the season is, I think that they'll be fine, and I think that he'll come back. They'll recoup him. They'll rehab him just fine, and he'll come back. And he'll fit right back in. I don't think that this is a panic mode move.
All right. Well, want to wrap up today's conversation talking about Noah Dobson, of course, obviously traded to the Montreal Canadiens earlier this offseason and signed an extension there. Now is making $9.5 million with the Canadiens. That makes him the highest paid player on their roster. So, of course, this is a younger team overall, so not a ton of big, hefty contracts there right now in Montreal, but that doesn't mean that they aren't coming. Mike, we've got Lane Hutson's entry-level contract that's going to be expiring next season. Presumably, they're going to want to be signing him to a longer-term extension. We know that's not going to come cheap. So, looking at, if we're using the benchmark, if we're using Dobson's $9.5 million as a benchmark here, where do you think Hutson's next contract falls? Is it going to be higher AAV or lower?
Well, I mean, let's just say this. If he has half the amount of points that he had last season, that's not going to be a deterrence, because Dobson had half the amount of points he had the previous season and got $9.5 million. If Hutson does what he did last year, the Canadiens are in a wonderful position. Carey Price's contract is expiring. Mike Matheson's contract is expiring. Patrick Laine's is expiring. Their top three forwards are all locked up on long-term deal, and the cap is going up. If he has as good a year as he had last year, he's going to make more than Dobson. So I'd say 10 million plus.
Willie, what do you think?
Well, I mean, it all depends on this season, right? I think that he has to go out. He has to go out and play for the contract that he wants, and I don't foresee it being an issue with this kid. I mean, he has all the tools, and you look at what he's been able to do. And I think that there are other second and third contracts that they could use for a basis of comparison between Dahlin and Makar and Seider. I mean, there are guys out there that they're going to have comparable contracts to look at in terms of what he does. But I think he has to play for the contract extension that he's going to, or the new contract he's going to sign. This season will determine that, whether or not. I don't think necessarily that you compare it to anybody else until he puts everything on the ice this coming season.
well, he may follow the mode of somebody like Austin Matthews and not take an 8-year deal, because a lot of the, Suzuki, Caulfield, and Slavkovsky took max deals. He could take a 5-year deal, but he's going to expect an AAV of probably something like $10 million, because the cap is going up to over $100 million. So if he has a 66-point season like he did in his rookie year, he's going to make the Olympic team and he's going to make $10 million.
Yeah, we'll see if that sophomore slump comes for him. But for now, I think you're right. I think he's looking like he's in for a pretty big payday for his next contract in Montreal. That's going to do it for today's episode of The Wraparound. Thank you to everyone who tuned in to listen and watch us today. We do appreciate you coming to talk some hockey with us, even during the off season here. Of course, thank you as always to Sticks.com for sponsoring us. For Mike Augello and Willie Ramirez, I'm Emma Lingan. This is The Wraparound, and we will see you next week.